Welcome to Quailcast, the show where we dive into the fascinating world of backyard farming, homesteading, and everything in between. I'm Emily, and today we're cracking open a topic that's both practical and rewarding: incubating and hatching quail eggs. Whether you're an aspiring quail keeper or just curious about how these tiny birds make their way into the world, this episode is for you. We'll be breaking down Laura Friesen's complete guide to incubating and hatching quail eggs, a treasure trove of tips and tricks for anyone looking to raise Coturnix quail, or even explore other species like bobwhite or California quail. From selecting the right eggs and setting up your incubator to understanding hatch rates and troubleshooting common challenges, we've got it all covered. Did you know that Coturnix quail are often recommended for beginners? Or that shipped eggs might only have a 50% hatch rate compared to locally sourced ones? And what about the importance of backup thermometers? Spoiler alert, they're a game changer. By the end of this episode, you'll have a step-by-step roadmap to successfully hatch your own quail chicks, and maybe even feel inspired to start your flock. So grab a cup of coffee, or tea if you're more of a tea person, and let's get started.
All right, buckle up everybody, because today we are going deep into the world of hatching quail eggs at home.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And to guide us on this adventure, we have this super comprehensive article from the blog, An Ordinary Existence.
I've seen this one, yeah.
It's called A Complete Guide to Incubating and Hatching Quail Eggs. Straightforward and to the point, just like we like it.
Definitely.
And by the end of this deep dive, you'll have all the knowledge you need to hatch your own adorable little quail chicks.
Whether you're hoping to have fresh quail eggs every morning or just love these cute little birds, this is the deep dive for you.
Yeah, exactly right. Or maybe you just think it's cool to say that you hatched a bird from an egg in your own house.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
It really is. And we're going to talk about all the fascinating stuff like the best incubation temperature and the humidity.
Don't forget about the pip and zip process.
Oh, right. Yeah, the pip and zip. I always love saying that. And we'll also cover why you actually shouldn't help a chick that seems to be struggling to hatch.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to just let nature do its thing.
Exactly. So let's just jump right in. And the first thing we need to talk about is the quail eggs themselves.
Right, because not all quail eggs are created equal.
Well, yeah, obviously you need fertile eggs. But the article also recommends Coturnix quail for beginners.
Makes sense. They're pretty easy to care for, and their eggs are easy to find.
So where do we get these special eggs? Can I just swing by the grocery store?
Ah, good question. But no, the eggs at the grocery store are unfertilized.
So those are only good for eating.
Pretty much, yeah. You'll need to find a local supplier or breeder, or you can collect them from your own flock if you're already raising quail.
Okay, so let's say I've ordered some fertile Coturnix quail eggs, and they arrive at my doorstep. What then?
Well, you need to store them properly until you're ready to put them in the incubator.
The article mentions storing them pointy side down.
Right, that's not just for looks. It helps maintain the air sac in the larger end of the egg.
So it's important for the developing chick.
Yeah, that air sac is crucial for the chick just before hatching. That's where they'll take their first breaths.
Wow. I never knew that it's like every little detail matters in this whole process.
It really does. And speaking of details, we need to set some realistic expectations about hatch rates.
Okay, you're not going to tell me that not every egg hatches, are you?
That's just the reality, unfortunately.
I mean, it makes sense. Nature isn't perfect, but still kind of a bummer.
For sure. But it's important to know what to expect. So, locally sourced fresh eggs typically have a hatch rate around 75–80%.
That's pretty good, I guess.
Yeah, but shipped eggs have a lower hatch rate, usually closer to 50%.
Wow, that's a big difference.
It is. So you need to factor that into how many eggs you decide to incubate, especially if you're ordering them online.
So many things to think about. I had no idea.
And there are other factors that can affect the hatch rate too, like the quality of the eggs themselves and the conditions during shipping.
Right. And even the incubator itself.
Oh yeah, a faulty incubator can totally mess things up.
I learned that the hard way. My first attempt at hatching quail, I only got a 15% hatch rate because the incubator's thermometer was way off.
Oh no.
Luckily, I had a separate thermometer and I was able to figure out what was going wrong. But yeah, lesson learned, always double check your equipment.
Absolutely. And speaking of equipment, the article talks about the 3 essential pieces you'll need.
Lay it on me.
You'll need an incubator, of course, and then a thermometer hygrometer to monitor the temperature and humidity.
And don't forget a backup thermometer hygrometer.
You got it. You really can't be too careful when it comes to accuracy.
I mean, my incubator fiasco is proof of that.
For sure. And the third piece of equipment is optional. It's a quail egg candler.
So we can, like, light candles around the incubator to create a nice ambiance?
Not quite. Candling is about using a bright light to see inside the egg so you can track the development of the embryo.
Oh, that makes sense.
It can be a little tricky with quail eggs, though, because their shells are so dark.
So you can't really see what's going on inside.
Right. The article even mentions that a lot of people skip the candling step without any problems.
So if you're feeling adventurous, you can give it a try, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've got our eggs, we've got our incubator all set up with our backup thermometer, hygrometer. What's next?
Well, you want to prep the incubator about 24 hours in advance.
To get it all warmed up and ready to go.
Exactly. You need to make sure the temperature and humidity are stable before you add the eggs.
Okay, makes sense. So day 1 rolls around, and we carefully place those precious eggs in the incubator.
It's like the official start of the countdown.
Right, and then we just sit back and wait for tiny quail to magically appear.
Not exactly magic, but pretty darn close. For the next 14 days, you'll need to monitor the temperature and humidity like a hawk.
Those backup thermometers are gonna get a workout.
They sure are. The article recommends keeping the temperature at a steady 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.5 degrees Celsius, and the humidity around 45–50%.
Sounds precise.
It is. Those little embryos are sensitive to changes in their environment.
So we're just staring at the numbers for 2 weeks straight.
Not quite. You also need to turn the eggs.
Turn the eggs. What's that all about?
So basically, you need to turn the eggs a few times a day to prevent the embryo from sticking to the shell membrane.
Is that like a tiny quail workout?
You could say that it helps them develop properly.
Okay, so turning the eggs makes sense, but some incubators have an automatic turner, right?
Yeah, if you have that feature, you're good to go. But if not, you'll have to do it manually.
All right, so we're keeping an eye on the temperature, the humidity, and diligently turning those eggs. What happens after the 2-week mark?
That's when things get really exciting because we enter what's called lockdown day.
Lockdown day sounds intense.
It is. In a way, it's day 15, and it marks a crucial transition in the process.
Okay, so what exactly goes down on lockdown day?
Well, first of all, you stop turning the eggs.
Why is that?
Because you want to allow the chicks to get into the right position for hatching.
Oh, I see.
You also need to increase the humidity to around 65–70%.
To help soften the shells?
Exactly. And if your incubator doesn't have a textured bottom, you might want to add a grippy mat or something similar.
So those little chicks have something to grip onto when they hatch.
Right, exactly.
I never would have thought about that. So after lockdown day, we just hold our breath and wait for those little quail to hatch.
Well, not quite, but we're going to have to pause here and pick things up in part 2 with this deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks, because next time we're going to talk about the pip and zip process and what to expect on hatch day.
It's going to be adorable.
I can't wait.
Hey there, Quailcast listeners. We're taking a quick break, but before we get back to the show, I want to share something that's perfect for all you animal lovers out there, especially if you've ever dreamed of having your own backyard flock. If you haven't heard of My Pet Chicken, let me introduce you. They're your one-stop shop for everything related to raising happy, healthy chickens. Whether you're just starting out or you're already a seasoned coop keeper, they've got it all. Baby chicks, coops, supplies, and even expert advice to help you every step of the way. Here's the best part. If you've been thinking about adding some feathered friends to your family, now's the time to check them out. Just visit My Pet Chicken to explore their amazing selection of breeds, ready-to-assemble coops, and top-notch gear. And guess what? By using our special link at quailcast.com/mypetchicken, you'll not only find everything you need to start or grow your flock, but you'll also be supporting the show at no extra cost to you. It's a win-win. So whether you're looking for adorable fluffy chicks, durable coop designs, or tips from their friendly experts, head over to My Pet Chicken today. Who knows? Your next backyard buddy might be waiting for you. Thanks so much for supporting the podcast in this way. It means the world to us. Now let's hop back into the episode.
All right, welcome back to our quail hatching adventure. I am so ready to see those little chicks.
Me too. And you know those eggs in the incubator are just days away from hatching at this point.
I know. I'm on the edge of my seat here. So tell me what happens after lockdown day. What should we be watching for?
Well, you might start to see some action around day 16 or 17.
Action, like, I mean, is there like a quail egg live stream we can watch or something?
Not quite. But you'll start to notice tiny cracks in the shells. Those are called pips.
The pip and zip. I remember you mentioned that earlier.
Exactly. The chick uses its egg tooth to break through the shell.
Egg tooth. Is that like a little quail beak accessory?
It's a small, hard point on their beak that helps them break out of the egg. Pretty amazing, huh?
It is. And then once the chick pips its way out, are we good to go? Is that the hatching moment?
Not quite. Actually, after pipping, the chick usually rests for a while, could be several hours or even a whole day.
What are they doing in there, just chilling?
Well, they're absorbing the last of the yolk sac and getting ready for the big push.
Makes sense. They need to fuel up for their grand entrance.
Exactly. And that's when the zip part happens.
Okay, I've been waiting to hear about this. So what does the zip look like?
The chick starts to rotate inside the egg and uses its egg tooth to crack the shell even more.
So they're like little escape artists breaking out of their shells.
Haha. Pretty much, they essentially zip the shell open along a circular line.
I can just imagine them in their tiny chicks with their tiny egg teeth zipping their way out of those eggs.
It's amazing to watch, and, this is where patience is super important.
Oh, yeah. I bet it's tempting to help them out if they seem to be struggling.
The article really stresses that you should resist that urge. Even if it looks like a chick is having a hard time hatching, you shouldn't intervene.
But what if they get stuck?
I know it's hard to watch, but the chick needs to go through this process on its own.
To build up their strength.
Right, exactly. It helps them develop the coordination and strength they'll need to survive outside the egg.
Okay, that makes sense. Hands off the hatching chicks, got it.
Good. And once those little guys finally zip their way out, what do you think happens next?
I don't know, they just run around and start partying like tiny quail teenagers.
Not quite.
Yeah.
They need a little time to recover. They'll stay in the incubator for about 12 to 24 hours after hatching.
To dry off and fluff up.
Yep. They're also still absorbing the last bits of their yolk sac during this time.
So it's like their first little quail spa day, warmth rest, and all the yolk they can handle.
Exactly. And then once they're all dry and fluffy, they're ready for their new home.
The brooder, right.
That's right. Remember we talked about setting up a brooder for the chicks?
Oh, yeah, like a cozy little quail nursery.
You got it. And luckily, the article mentions a separate guide on brooding quail chicks.
Perfect, because I'm sure there's a lot to learn about that, too.
There is. But for now, let's just give a quick overview.
All right, lay it on me.
So the brooder is all about mimicking the warmth and protection that a mother hen would provide.
So lots of warmth and snuggles.
Basically, the article says to start with a brooder temperature around 95 degrees Fahrenheit for the first week.
Wow, that's pretty toasty. How do you maintain that temperature? Tiny quail space heaters.
Good one. But no, a heat lamp is usually the best option.
Makes sense. And I'm guessing you need to keep a close eye on those chicks to make sure the temperature is just right.
Absolutely. If they're all huddled under the lamp, it's probably too cold. But if they're spread out far away, it might be too hot.
So finding that sweet spot is key.
Yep. And you also need to make sure they have access to food and water.
Oh, right. Tiny chicks, tiny beaks.
Exactly. You'll need starter feed that's specially formulated for quail chicks. It's usually finely ground, so it's easy for them to eat.
Makes sense. And what about water? Tiny quail swimming pools?
Cute, but not practical. You'll need a shallow dish or a specialized chick waterer.
Why a special water? Can't they just use a regular dish?
Well, quail chicks are so tiny and fragile in those first few days, they could easily fall into a regular dish and not be able to get out.
Oh, no, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so the specialized waterers are designed to prevent accidental drowning.
Okay, drowning prevention is a must-have. So we've got the temperature, food, and water sorted. What else is there to know about brooding?
Cleanliness is super important. Quail chicks can be pretty messy.
Makes sense. Gotta keep those little fluff balls healthy.
Exactly. Regular cleaning and fresh bedding will help prevent the spread of diseases.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap for our listeners who are now picturing adorable quail chicks running around their backyard. What are the key takeaways from our hatching and brooding deep dive so far?
Well, first of all, preparation is key. Make sure you have all the equipment you need and double-check everything, especially the temperature and humidity ratings.
Absolutely. And don't forget the backup thermometers.
And of course, patience is crucial throughout the entire process, from setting those eggs to watching those chicks take their first steps.
It sounds like an amazing experience, but also a lot of responsibility.
It is. And there's one more thing we need to talk about that our source material didn't really cover.
What's that?
The ethics of hatching and raising quail.
Oh, that's a really important point. We've covered the how-tos, but now we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Exactly. We focused on the practical aspects, but it's also crucial to think about the ethical implications of bringing new life into the world.
I like that. So let's dive into those ethical waters and talk about the questions that come with hatching and raising quail at home.
Like, what about hatching quail for meat or eggs? How is that ethically different from buying them at the store?
Or what about releasing those chicks into the wild? Good idea or bad idea?
These are tough questions, but important ones to consider, so stay tuned, folks, because in part 3 of our deep dive, things are going to get really interesting.
Hi again, Quailcast listeners. We're taking a short break, but first, let me share a solution to a common challenge for anyone interested in hatching eggs at home. Maintaining the right conditions, temperature, humidity, turning schedules, can feel overwhelming. But this egg incubator simplifies everything. It uses a strong fan for stable temps, lets you refill water externally to avoid disturbing the environment, includes a built-in candler for monitoring embryo development, and even turns the eggs automatically every hour. Plus, it stops turning 3 days before hatching to mimic natural behavior. If this sounds like something you'd love to try, head over to our affiliate link, quailcast.com/MATICOOPX. That's quailcast.com/MATICOOPX. Using this link won't cost you anything extra, but it does help us keep bringing you great episodes. Thanks for supporting the show. And now, let's dive back into the episode.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle the ethics of hatching quail at home.
It's a conversation we need to have,
Definitely. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in all the excitement of incubating and hatching.
but we need to be responsible too.
For sure. So let's jump right in. One of the big questions is about hatching quail for meat or eggs.
Right. Is that ethically different from buying them at the grocery store?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, on one hand, you could argue that raising your own quail might give you more control over their living conditions.
And you can make sure they're treated humanely, which is something you can't always be sure of with commercially raised quail.
Exactly. But then there's also the argument that by raising quail for food, you're still participating in a system that commodifies animals.
Right. It's about what you're comfortable with. There's no easy
No,
answer.
definitely not. It really comes down to your own personal beliefs.
Exactly.
Okay, so another ethical question that came up was about releasing hatched quail into the wild.
Oh, yeah, that one.
At first, I thought it sounded like a great idea.
Yeah.
Boost the local quail population.
Right, like a feel-good conservation project.
But the article mentioned that it's actually not that simple.
It can actually be harmful to release domesticated quail into the wild.
Really? How so?
Well, domesticated quail, they might not have the same survival skills as wild quail.
So they might not know how to find food or avoid predators?
Exactly, and they could also spread diseases to wild populations.
Wow, that's a bummer. I didn't think about any of that.
It's a good reminder that even when we have good intentions, things can go wrong.
Definitely so. Before releasing any animals into the wild, do your research and talk to the experts.
Absolutely. Make sure you understand the potential consequences.
So with all these ethical considerations, it's clear that hatching quail is more than just a fun DIY project.
It's a responsibility. You're bringing living beings into the world, and you need to be prepared to care for them.
And make thoughtful choices about how you raise them.
Right, exactly.
It's interesting. We started this deep dive talking about incubation temperatures and humidity.
And ended up having a deep conversation about ethics.
That's kind of the beauty of these deep dives. We never know where they'll take us.
We learn something new every time.
So for all our listeners who are now thinking about starting their own quail hatching adventures, remember that knowledge is power.
Do your research, think critically, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
And if you're struggling with the ethical questions, there are resources out there to help you.
You can connect with other quail enthusiasts online or find a local expert to talk to.
And most importantly, treat these little birds with respect.
They're relying on us to provide a safe and healthy environment.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this quail hatching extravaganza.
It's been quite a journey.
I know, right? We've gone from tiny eggs to ethical dilemmas, all in 3 parts.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We hope you learned a lot and had some fun along the way.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive into a new topic.
Until then, keep exploring and stay curious.
Happy hatching, everybody.
That's all for today's episode of Quillcast. We truly hope you found this conversation as meaningful as we did. For more insights, visit us at quillcast.com, where you'll find show notes, updates, and exclusive bonus content. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to hit that follow button on Spotify or your preferred platform. It's the easiest way to stay connected and catch every new episode. Thank you so much for being here with us. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep flying high with Quillcast.